Hello, welcome back. I'm slowly catching up to restoring, replacing important files on my computer so I can start to make more videos as well as catching up on watching YouTube. So I'm getting there. Anyhow, I have some free time, so I figure I want to talk a little bit about one of the topic that Dr. Von Schiller, I think that's how you pronounce it, and I exchanged a little bit about comic book speculation and the comic marketplace. And I have my own thoughts about speculation and when it started. This is just my opinions. I don't have any hard facts or any kind of research to back it up, so it'd be fun to see what other people think about when speculation started to take hold in the comic collecting psyche. For sure, I think through the early days of the 30s and 40s, collecting, hoarding was not in the psyche of comic readers for sure. And I'm not sure even in the 50s or even early 60s. You certainly, uh, you know, I don't know any old timer that tell me that they run out there and bought multiple copy of Amazing Fantasy 15 because they thought it was awesome. I would love to meet and talk to any collectors that bought, you know, early Silver Age Marvel um, in multiple copies. I have known and met a few collectors that actually bought something like an X-Men #1 off the rack or even Fantastic Four #1 off the rack. But certainly those collectors in those younger days really didn't have the foresight that this thing could be worth a lot 50 years later. So they didn't hoard or bought multiple copies to speculate on the future value. So in the last, few years, as I pay more attention to the value of my collection, I certainly thought about, when did comic books value become something, that people speculate on. I can tell you for myself, I bought my first price guide in 1983. I still have a copy today. I bought a copy in 1983, and then I bought 85, and then I think I skipped until 1989. So the first three Overstreet price guide that I bought was 83, 85, and 89. And then I skipped almost like a decade until like 2000 when I bought another one. So it was fun for me. It was fun to read the price guide, to look at all the ads, but as far as value, you know, I didn't buy it because I want to know uh, what my collection is worth. Back then, back in 83, 85, I didn't have much of anything that was worthwhile to keep track of. So, sure, having the price guide back then was useful for me to go to the convention in order to, haggle with the dealer. But that was one of the main reasons that I bought the price guide. But I think speculation in the hobby started to take place in 1970. Now, why do I say 1970? I think because the first price guide came out in 1970. Up until that point, you know, the hobby was still very young, very young. You don't have organized convention yet. Not that I know. I think San Diego Comic Con, the first one was 1970, as well as the first price guide by Mr. Overstreet, that was 1970. So I think by having organized convention where you can have big sales and mass showing of books, as well as having the availability of a price guide to put a value on certain things, I think that was the beginning of the speculation phase in the hobby, because for the first time a person can take a look at books and see the value of what it is worth. Because you gotta understand, back in 1970, there's no internet. There is information was hard to come by, so that's a key. Speculation require information. Okay, it's not speculation does not happen in a vacuum bubble. Okay, so in order for somebody to go out there and say, "Ooh, I'm gonna buy up a whole bunch of copy of this issue," information must be available for that person to see the value or potential value. So I think having the Overstreet price guide is a start, the trigger, the thinking about how to speculate, how to hoard certain books. So having the price guide is one of the catalysts that started the speculation phase. There are other major events that I think brought attention to the value of comic books and draw in speculations. For example, one of the events that happened in 1973 that kind of pushed a comic book collection and value into the limelight is the purchase of Action Comic #1 by a 16 years old. Back in 1973, there was a 16 years old with a name Mitchell Meddy. I think that's how you pronounce his name, okay? But Mitchell, or Mitch, bought an Action comic book for something over, I think it was like it was 1850, something like that. It was over $1,800, but it made news. His face holding the Action comic #1 was in a bunch of newspaper. It was even mentioned on TV news. Can you imagine? On TV news, there was mention of a outlandish sum of money exchanged for a comic books in 1973. But there was a lot of buzz in the hobby as well as outside the hobby about the value of Action #1. So no doubt in my mind, that was one of the big events that brought attention to the value of comic books. And whenever you bring attention on value and money into anything, speculation happen. Okay, it's just like the last couple of years when we have the speculation with housing market. There wouldn't be any speculation in the housing market if there was not widespread news that housing value was going up and up and up and up and up, and people was making money flipping houses, right? So the same thing. So the moment that purchase of Action comic book #1 make big news, for sure it draw in a certain amount of speculation into the hobby. Um, Mitchell or Mitch is an interesting individual. If you Google his name, you will find some good reading or interesting reading. Believe it or not, I have exchanged emails and corresponded with Mr. Mitchell Meddy himself. So I have conversed with him, and he's an interesting fellow. I would not say that we are friends. We're not friends. Uh, you know, we exchange a few emails here and there, and to talk about the nature of the market. But that's about it. But if you can Google his name, I'm sure you'll find some interesting reading, as well as picture of him holding the Action 1 when he was 16 years old in 1973. I will include a link to this video about that so that you can see. But so that brought in speculation, and then no doubt the move by the publisher to go into the direct market is another one, because now the entire dynamic of the comic book market changed significantly when Marvel and DC and other publishers decided to go the direct route, and comic book stores started to sprout all over the country. In the mid 70s, late 70s, that's where you see a big boom. I think by mid 70s, from 75 to 77, 78, hoarding was definitely taking hold. There's a lot of people in the late 70s that started to buy multiple copies of many titles and put them away. A lot of people's doing that. So there's a lot. That's one reason why there are a ton of high grade Bronze Age books. Just because by mid 70s to the late 70s, with the direct sales market and Overstreet Price Guide by now, have educated collectors as well as speculators alike on the potential value of comics. So that's it, and it has never been the same since then. Anyone that collect comic books in the 80s and 90s, even today, I don't think you need to go very far to not see speculation in the hobby. So it has been going around for decades, but the topic of this video is when it started, and these are my views. Anyhow, if you have other thoughts on when or where speculation happened in the hobby, let me know. I would love to hear what other people think about speculation. Certainly in any hobby that have, on anything, forget just hobby, on anything that have a potential to make money, people will speculate. Speculators has been around since the Roman Empire. So it's nothing new. It's always fun for me to meet somebody that was able to speculate or hoard the right copies. It's always amazing to me to meet somebody that say, oh yeah, back in the 70s I bought 10 copies of Hulk 181 because I love Wolverine and I thought that book was going to be awesome and worth a lot of money later. So it's always interesting to find those kind of collector, because to understand the psyche of what they were thinking at the moment when those books came out. Anyhow, uh, enough rambling for this video, and thanks for watching. Until next time, bye.